And hello there. I'm John Rawl, and this is Citadel, also known as Citadel Gray Line, the show all about Bulldog sports. I'm joined by Andrew Miller of the Charleston Post and Courier, also by our Citadel Gray Line expert, if you will, Thomas Scruggs. And we are glad that you could be on this program powered by IPS Packaging and Automation, and also by Big Red Palmetto Store. A week in which the Citadel loses another game and is hovering right at the losing season mark on the season as the Citadel goes up to Spartanburg and is knocked out by a winless Wofford Terrier team. We're here to discuss it. We're also here to talk about a lot of other stuff going on within Citadel athletics. But let me welcome in the fearless twosome into the program, and that's Andrew and Thomas. Gentlemen, thank you all so much. First up, Andrew, we'll say hello to you. And you got
How you doing?
a pretty busy week. Tell us what's going on in Andrew's world this week.
Well, my youngest daughter Megan is getting married this weekend in Georgia, in Splendor Mountain near Clayton, Georgia. So we are officially at DEF CON 5 in my family, trying to get ready. We're leaving town tomorrow to get to the wedding venue site. So pretty pretty intense, pretty busy here. Also got a couple of stories I got to write before I get out of here. So yeah, very busy here in the Miller household.
Now, Andrew, I kind of thought you were a smart guy. How in the world could you let your daughter get married during football season?
Well, she made the date about a year and a half ago, and I was not in sports at that point. I was still a business and a metro writer on the news side and the business side, so did not have anything. Did not have any inkling that I'd be back in sports at this time. But happy I am, and happy I'm able to here to talk about Citadel football. But yeah, probably I would have asked her not to do it during the football season had had I known back then that I'd be in sports now. But
Well,
again, those kind of decisions were never up to me.
well, let me be the first to wish, if you don't mind, a happy marriage to your daughter. Her name is,
It's Megan,
and
Megan Miller,
and who is she marrying?
future Megan Foster. Huh?
Who is she marrying? Who's your son-in-law?
A young man named Josh Foster. He is a software engineer for the company that used to be Spaywar, and I can never remember what they are called now. So, yeah, he works on some top secret stuff over there.
Well, come Saturday, you'll have a couple of foster children. How about that?
Indeed.
All right. Speaking of children, Thomas Scruggs. Hello, welcome into Citadel Gray Line, sir.
Hey, good morning, John. I'm here in Columbia recovering from a weekend in the mountains of Georgia with my Delta 95 classmates.
Yeah, you were not far from Clayton, Georgia, there in Helen. Great place to go this time of year for Oktoberfest. And great to
Yes,
see
sir.
that you and your compadres from class of 95 were able to get together. And you're sitting down, but I do assume by now you can stand upright if need be.
Yes, sir. Day 3 of detox is going well.
All right. Well, we're glad to hear you. We're going to try to walk through the detox of Citadel football here on this show. And again, we welcome your feedback here. Citadel at y'all.com is one way to reach out to us here on the program. And then on our Facebook page, feel free to reach out to us there as well here on the Gray Line. As mentioned, the Citadel goes to Spartanburg. Gibbs Stadium was a setting. Gentlemen, it was not a very good day for Bulldog sports. Wofford gets their first win in like a year and a half, and the Citadel's season continues to spiral out of control.
Yeah, it was to me. Again, this kind of the story that I wrote for Sunday's paper was, the Wofford game really was supposed to be the game that kind of got their mojo back, that kind of got them back on track, that kind of got them back to their winning ways, and the absolute opposite happened when they went up there. I've been covering sports for more than 3 decades, close to 4 decades now, and I don't know that I've seen a coach react the way that Brent Thompson did after the loss. It looked like he had, lost someone in his family, that he had a gut punch to him. You can talk about a lot of things, the offense, the defense, whatever. Brent Thompson cares about this team. He cares about his players. That's not in question. Whatever happens to Brent Thompson at the end of the season happens because he didn't win enough games. If they don't bring him back, but people who don't think he doesn't care about his players or this team, they're wrong, and they didn't see him after that game. I mean, it was, like I said, I've not seen a coach react like that after a loss in a long, long, long time, if ever.
Well, it was a bad loss, especially if you're in the Scruggs house where you have a Walford wife.
Walford wife, Walford friends posting on social media. John, you and I talked about it, I guess, a few days before the game, and hoping that the cure for Walford's winless season wasn't the Citadel. I don't think you and I were quite as optimistic as Andrew, and proved to be true. To lose to your top two rivals, Furman and Walford, back to back like that, it's just like getting over the weekend in Georgia. Here we are still trying to get over this loss against Walford. So it's 1-5 on the season. I agree with Andrew. You can see it written all over Brent Thompson's face. Don't know what's going on in the locker room there, but look, we gained 400 yards in offense. You would think that would muster more than 16 points. So there's definitely some positives from the game. It's just we got to stop these single quarter meltdowns. Thompson talked about it at the press conference. We come out, it's a competitive game, first quarter, second quarter. We just melt down, turn the ball over inside the 50 once more. Walford has two short drives. Not much you can say, other than the second half, the defense did a great job. They gave up one touchdown.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the biggest thing that I found watching this team this year is consistency. You'll see signs on both sides of the ball that they're good, that they're a pretty good team. They can move the ball, they can stop the opposition, but they just haven't been able to put a consistently good performance on both sides of the ball together. And I think if I'm a fan, that's the thing that's most frustrating. Tommy just pointed it out. They had over 400 yards of total offense. They only scored 16 points. That is unacceptable. They had a 90-yard drive that they didn't get any points out of. And afterwards, Peyton Derrick is like, that's unacceptable. We can't do that. They're a ball control, wear out the defense kind of team. And we'll see that for a quarter or maybe a quarter and a half. And then for some reason, that goes away. Not picking up, fourth and short a couple of times against Walford. They're huge, two fourth down stops that the Walford defense made that I thought really kind of changed a lot of the momentum in the game. Citadel was able to get chunk plays, able to get a couple of explosive plays in the running game, especially between the tackles, which I thought was a really positive sign. But again, they just can't put enough of those things together to be a consistent football team, and you need to be a consistent football team to win.
Andrew, you referenced Coach Thompson, and you saw him after the loss to, was it Furman, where he got into, I guess, an argument with an alumnus. What was the difference between those two different post-game settings?
Yeah, well, I didn't see the confrontation between Brent and whoever it was, a fan or alumnus or whatever it was.
But you saw him just after that in the locker room.
Right. But both reactions were pretty similar. I mean, he's a professional. He's going to come out and answer questions. There are times when I could be accused of not being the toughest journalist out there. I don't want like kicking guys when they're down. If I ask a tough question, usually I'll do it during the press conference on Monday because then he's had time to reflect on it, or maybe later in the week. But his reaction to both. I mean, he takes losses very, very hard. And in football, unlike basketball, unlike baseball, you're going to play more frequently. So I think that's a lot of the way that coaches react after wins and losses is dictated on what sport they are. In baseball and hockey and basketball, you're going to play either the next day or a couple of days after that. So you can get over wins, or, you can celebrate the win very shortly because you got to get ready for the next game. But football, it's like, you have 12, 13 games during the year, depending on if you go bowl game or what league you're in. And so you got that whole week to kind of think about it and build up to whatever your next opponent is. And so I think it's, football coaches take losses much harder than other coaches out there. Not that any coach takes any loss great, obviously.
After watching his Monday press conference, though, unlike the week before, Andrew, Coach Thompson definitely made himself more available than I've seen him all year. He answered a bunch of questions. A lot of questions were asked of the coach this week at the press conference. Did you hear me?
Oh yeah, yeah. I thought you were gonna. I thought you were getting ready to play the press. Yeah, I asked him about the fourth and short plays. I wanted to know how you stay positive when you're on a losing streak like this, because I think that losing the locker room, if and I don't know if he's lost it yet or not. I mean, when I talk to some of the guys on the team, it appears that he has not lost it. But how do you not lose the locker room? How do you get those guys who transferred in as graduate seniors, graduate level transfers? How do you keep them kind of engaged and buying into the system, buying into their program? I think all these are questions that are going to be answered over these last 5 games here. And Brent is not one that's going to shy away from talking about some of the hard subjects, and he talked about using different personnel, maybe having different plays in there on those fourth and short situations. That's something that I'm going to write about in Saturday's advance. Is picking up those fourth down, those short yardage situations, which the Citadel should be really good at, but this year have not been particularly good at. And then how you keep the ball away from a high-powered Western Carolina offense. Because to me, the only way the Citadel is going to beat them is if they keep the ball away from them for huge amounts of time, kind of like that third quarter drive that the Bulldogs had against Appalachian State, where they kept it for more than 11 minutes. But they gotta punch it in the end zone. That's the other thing. They're not scoring. They're having some long drives and they can't score touchdowns, and that's, to me, one of the biggest issues there for the offense.
Well, as I mentioned, Coach Thompson this week did take plenty of time to answer questions from Andrew and other members of the media present there for the presser. He was asked a pretty tough question, and we're kind of talking about the struggles that he's got with his team winning, and Coach Thompson took more than enough time to answer the tough question about how he kind of keeps it together here during what's right now a several-game losing streak. Citadel 1-5 overall, and coming off a 31-16 setback to the Wofford Terriers. Here is Coach Brent Thompson.
Yeah, it's been. I did have high hopes for this year, and it's up and down. There's things that you can't control. Sometimes it's just the way that the schedule lays out. Sometimes it's injuries and things that are just bound to happen, and you just take the wrong injury in the wrong spot, and it becomes a little bit more detrimental than you would really like it to be. But we still got 5 games left. We got 1 win, so I told the team last night our expectation is to have 6 wins at the end of the year. We need to get to that mark. We need to believe that we can do that. And we've lost a little bit of our confidence along the way here with some of these games, some of these teams, and some of these wins right here, because I think we had opportunities to be able to be a lot better against mostly the last 2 weeks. I think we had chances to win both of those games if we would have played a little bit better, especially on the offensive side. So. The disappointment is there, but we still got a lot to play for here, and we just got to keep on going, keep plugging away. And there's nothing more that we can do. We can't change anything. We can't change the schedule. We can't change the way that things are. We are going to have a stretch here where we're going to be at home for a while. We just got to get to that stretch, and hopefully, I would love to be able to get some of these guys back. Logan Billings being out, Tyler Cherry being out. Those are 2 key positions for us, and then just a couple of other. Even Wilson being out right there after the first game, that kind of hurt us, and lost him for the year, though, unfortunately. So, but nothing we can do about injuries. It's a part of the game. We just got to move on from it.
Are any of those guys going to?
All right, that was Coach Brent Thompson, head man of the Citadel, and that was earlier this week where he held a press conference getting everybody set for Western Carolina, the opponent this week. Before we turn our attention totally to the Catamounts, and a lot of questions, a lot of real frustration being typed out by a lot of Citadel fans on message boards here in the last few days. Andrew, any closing notes on the Wofford loss before we turn a page?
Yeah, I mean, they were without Tyler Cherry. They were without Logan Billings. They will not return, according to Brent Thompson, for the Western Carolina game. Obviously, that's one of your key running backs and your top deep threat in the passing game. Although I will say that I did write a little bit about it in for Tuesday's paper, Monday's press conferences. Christian Hilton's really been the true freshman. He's really been a bright spot, I think, for the Bulldogs at wide receiver. I think he's made some great catches. He made a really nice, I think, 30-yard catch against Wofford in traffic, over his shoulder catch. Showed great concentration there. So, I think he's got a really bright future. Brent Thompson thinks he's got a really bright future. They get him and Tyler Cherry back for games, and I think they'll have two pretty good wide receivers out there. But the not being able to score points, the offense showed signs of life. They were able to move the ball, relatively consistently against Wofford, but only coming up with 16 points, not converting on the fourth down situations. I think that's really disappointing. And then, Wofford was able to get some big chunk plays on the defense, especially against a secondary that I thought had been really the strength of the Citadel team all season long was the play in their secondary. So those are things that if you're a Citadel fan, that got to make you a little bit worried.
And Thomas, any final notes on the Wofford loss before you gladly move on to Western Carolina?
No, John. Unfortunately, losing is contagious. It's been 5 weeks since this football team's had a victory. And then we've, go 1-5 going into the really tough stretch of our schedule. Is usually that's not a recipe for success. So I know, Coach Thompson has to be optimistic and communicate that to his players. But, like you say, there's a lot of noise out there on social media. I don't think the Bulldog faithful are very optimistic at this point about the final stretch of the schedule.
And I did like Coach Thompson saying that he's got plans to win all 5 of these remaining games. We sure hope that is the case for the mighty cadets of El Cid. Let me tell you before we move on to another subject here on Citadel Gray Line about one of our great presenting sponsors of this show. It's IPS Packaging and Automation. They're a name that you can trust. Since the bicentennial year of 1976, IPS Packaging and Automation has been providing manufacturers and e-commerce companies with the very best packaging products and automation in the entire industry. IPS Packaging and Automation offers a complete line of packaging products from stretch films and 3M tapes to corrugated boxes, strapping, and automation. IPS Packaging and Automation will analyze and streamline your current methods, and they'll improve your packaging process for sure. Give them a call at 800-277-7007 to learn more, or go to their website, ipack.com. That's ipack.com. IPS Packaging and Automation is a proud supporter of Citadel Athletics. IPS Packaging and Automation brings you Citadel Gray Line each week, as well as BigRedPalmetto.store. We will have a Knob Knowledge question coming up in just a moment regarding this week's contest, where you can get a $25 gift certificate to BigRedPalmetto.store. Somebody's going to be a lucky winner. Now, after the loss to Wofford, as mentioned, there were lots of thumbprint, or whatever that term is, pirates out there on the social media world going off on this coaching staff. I even got a text here on our Citadel Gray Line hotline, which I need to tell y'all what that number is. Y'all can call that hotline and text us anytime you feel like it, because if there's something Citadel related, well, golly, we want to hear about it. In fact, that's also the same number you need to call if you want to be part of our knowledge question and answer it. The number to call, our local Charleston number, is 843-779-8496. 843-779-8496, and that's how you can text us anytime. And also, that's where you can text your answer to our Knob Knowledge question, which I think I'm going to ask a Brent Thompson related question here for our Knob Knowledge in just a second. But in Brent Thompson's defense, one of the big subjects that came out this week, Andrew, and I know that's exactly what you wanted to come on here and talk about today as you're getting ready for a big feast on Saturday, is food. And this was like the biggest topic of discussion on a lot of the message boards, and I got text about it. And the question was that there's been some drama in the last few years of not feeding the players like maybe in the old core days, where the football team and all the sports team had their own separate mess, and they would be able to eat a lot of food and didn't have to necessarily be bracing as knobs have to do at all times. Some things changed in recent years, supposedly, and I don't know for sure because I'm not there on campus. Supposedly there's no more core squad meals and some of the players aren't getting enough nutrition. Have you heard anything about that, Andrew?
Not a thing. I have not heard that. I know that they did back when I was covering the Citadel, the athletic, especially the football team, had their own separate kind of mess hall or at least section of the cafeteria where they would eat. I don't, and again, I haven't been. That was in the early to mid '90s when I was on the beat. That was, I think, '93 to '97 or '98. Because I remember going in there and talking to a couple of players, in the middle of the week for interviews, and we don't do the interviews there anymore. But I can tell you this: after the Wofford game, there was quite the buffet for the players outside of the locker room, outside right out there, right before they would get on the buses, and they had plenty of food there. I can tell you that it was making me hungry. And having that 1:30 kickoff is kind of weird because I try to eat a little bit earlier, but by the end it's like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and I'm getting pretty hungry at that point. So I can tell you they had a buffet style meal, post game meal there. It wasn't like a Bojangles, couple of chickens and a biscuit or anything like that. It was a legit meal that they had after the game. So that's the only thing I can speak of. I can speak to.
Well, Andrew, I'm actually sadly as old as you are when it comes to being around the Citadel campus. I go back to the original dining hall, which I'm assuming that's where you first started seeing some of these Citadel athletes, the one they tore down, and Coward Dining Hall, I think was the name of it. And they had their own separate section. And as a non-football, non-athletic cadet, you were a little jealous because the core squad guys got to have all kinds of food and all that. But, the flip side of that, look what all they were doing. And look at what all the energy they needed and the food. I mean, good Lord, the wrestlers the Citadel has, they literally one day are stuffing stuff down their throat, and the next day they're puking it out. And I don't wish that on anybody. So there's a reason for all that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I don't. I wrestled 1 year in high school, and trying to make weight and stuff like that. That's no fun at all. I can tell you that.
Well, if you need to go back to the old days and recreate that, you're welcome to do that. But gosh, I lived around wrestlers for 4 years there at Moultrie Street, and those guys are disgusting.
Yeah.
But we respect them, good people, but it's a weird sport for sure. But anyway, I didn't know what you'd heard about the whole food aspect. There were some real complaints that a lot of these cadets are just not getting properly fed. And I think a reason was given many years ago that they needed to shift from the core squad meal to having meals all together to create the esprit de corps, if you will. That may be the case, but something tells me, knowing how things usually come down to things, something tells me it probably had to do with saving money. That's just a wild guess, because they've done, and Thomas, you have to chime in on this because I know you keep a much closer eye on the core cadets than I do. They've also totally redone meals in general there at the Citadel now. Do you actually know what it currently is, how meals are currently served there?
Well, John, my understanding is, used to be you'd have what we called a mess table where you had all four classes represented, and the knobs would serve the upperclassmen. I think now it's more of a knobs eat together. So I don't know if it's that way this year. I know the past couple of years it's more like a cafeteria style like they do up at VMI. Last time I was at VMI for a Citadel VMI football game, I witnessed that. So I think they've moved more to that model.
Okay. Again, I think a lot of that was to save money because they also don't require, from what I understand, upperclassmen don't have to go to every single meal like they used to have to. You used to have to line up in formation and march over to chow, and I don't think that's a requirement now.
That's been a big bone of contention amongst the alumni, John, as you know. Like you said, even if you were a senior, you had to line up for formation to go eat dinner. And they haven't done that for several years, is my understanding.
And you'd want to go eat supper because, if you don't go march over to supper, you're not going to have supper. But the Citadel,
Exactly.
again, I think it comes down to money. They're saving money by not having to feed these kids. And I just think, I mean, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I just think it's probably all done to save money. All right. Don't know. Something to think about. Food for thought, if you will. All right. Let's talk a little knob knowledge. Y'all ready for some fun stuff here on today's Citadel Gray Line before we let the father of the bride out of here? Knob knowledge presented by BigRedPalmetto.store. Maybe, just maybe, Andrew, we can now know where your daughter can get all of her wedding gifts from BigRedPalmetto.store. That's right. We want you to text the answer of what we're about to ask to 843-779-8496. 779-8496. And this week's knob knowledge question, which, by the way, I don't even know what last week's was, but nobody even bothered to guess, so it's not worth repeating. Thomas, do you happen to remember what it was? I think I know what it was.
I have no idea.
We had Coker Day on, and my question was, what was the connection Batesburg-Leesville, South Carolina has with the Citadel?
That's right.
And Coker
That's
did
right.
not know. Shame on him. He needs to have his ring branded on his head for not knowing this. The answer is that one of the members of the crew of the Star of the West was from Leesville, South Carolina. Theodore Adolphus Quattlebaum, who was killed in the Civil War. He was killed in March of 1865. He was a lieutenant and was killed in the Civil War, but he was part of that gun crew of the Star of the West, and he was from Leesville, South Carolina. His family, Thomas, if you're a gun guy, actually made rifles. The Quattlebaum rifle was made right there off of exit 39. We talked about it last week. Right there is where the Quattlebaum rifle was made in Lexington County, South Carolina. How about that? Who knew? All right, this week's knob knowledge question. We're going to go from the south to the north. Thomas's favorite part of the country is up north.
Yeah.
Norwich University is the alma mater of one Brent Thompson. He played football for Norwich University, one of the 6 senior military colleges in the United States. It's a private military school. I didn't know that. I thought it might be public. It's not. I want you to tell me via our text line, 843-779-8496, what is the nickname of Norwich? What is their athletic nickname? And if you tell us what that is, we will send you a $25 gift certificate to BigRedPalmetto.store, or you can choose to donate your $25 gift certificate to the Fosters.
John, on Norwich, Norwich is the birthplace of ROTC in this country.
I did not know that. Thank you. Maybe I should have had that one as a Norwich, by the way, started in 1819. I should know this. When did West Point begin?
1801, maybe 180. I think, because the guy that founded Norwich came from West Point.
Okay. All right. And who would have ever thought a military college, our first private and one of our 6 senior military schools, would come from the unbelievable pro-military state of Vermont? But that's the case. So, yeah, text us that answer, and we will send y'all a $25 gift certificate. All right, we've talked food. We've talked Norwich. Now let's talk about Western Carolina. Andrew, this is a game that in years past, the Citadel, without too much effort, could go ahead and chalk that one up as a W. Get the dub. That's not the case this year.
No, and backtracking to Norwich, I actually know the answer to that question, and the only reason I know the answer to that question, this is going to be funny, is that a Russian kid played for the South Carolina Stingrays when they won their last Kelly Cup, and he went to Norwich, and I learned what their nickname was through this kid. His name is Nikita Kashirski. Actually helped the Stingrays win a Kelly Cup championship. That's the only reason I know that answer. But anyway, Western Carolina, really good offensive team, probably the best offensive team in the Southern Conference, averages around 530 yards a game, about 35 points a game. They've got a great quarterback, a really good running back, a couple of really good wide receivers. Desmond Reed is their running back. He's averaging 7 yards a carry. They use a couple of quarterbacks, Carlos Davis and Cole Gonzalez. Davis is more of the thrower, Gonzalez more of the dual threat guy. Got David White Jr. and Raphael Williams are two of the elite wide receivers in the conference. The one thing, though, about the Catamounts that might work in the Citadel's favor, if, again, their secondary can play up to the level that they were earlier in the season, is that Davis tends to throw interceptions. He's got 14 touchdowns and 12 interceptions on the year. That's one of the reasons they're kind of using two quarterbacks, is because he turns the ball over a little bit. And we know we got a pretty good ball hawking secondary for the Bulldogs. Destin Mack is probably one of the best ball hawks there is in the Southern Conference. Preseason All-SoCon player. Already has a couple interceptions too. So one of the keys I think for the Citadel is going to be turning Western Carolina over. Then the other key offensively is having long sustained drives that result in touchdowns and not field goals. Because you get into a scoring match with these guys, you're probably not going to beat them. And Citadel has not been able to consistently score this whole season. So they want it to be as low scoring game as they can, turn the Catamounts over as much as they can, and then have long sustained drives.
Thomas, do you concur?
Yes, sir, I do. John, we've got to keep the ball out of Western Carolina's hands. We can't turn the ball over inside our own 30 2 or 3 times and expect to be in this game. And one stat that I saw, like Andrew, I was quite surprised is how many turnovers they have on the season. So, we've got to capitalize. I think the odds are in our favor that we'll get 1 or 2 of those, and we have to score. This is a game, I think, because they're so fast and explosive, the only way we keep up with them is to keep the ball out of their hands and convert on these turnovers. And, who knows?
Who knows? Maybe a win there in the beautiful mountains of Western North Carolina. That would be a great thing. So the Bulldogs go into the game. Tell me again, Andrew, the 3 players Coach Thompson was referencing that will not be available because of health issues.
Tyler Cherry, the wide receiver, Logan Billings, and then Landon Owens, who hasn't played the entire year, but they thought he would be healthy by now and ready to go. And he's another wide receiver. So really young at the wide receiver spot right now. And then Wilson, who hurt his the cornerback, or I forget if I think he's a safety. I'm sorry. He got hurt in the first game of the year. I think he blew out his knee against Campbell. So but Logan Billings, Tyler Cherry, and then Landon Owens. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we will be wishing all those guys the best as their recovery is still an ongoing process. Let's take a quick look at the SoCon standings. Right now, the Mercer Bears are atop the SoCon standings. They're 4-0. Chattanooga's 3-0, as well as Sanford. Furman 3-1. Western, the Citadel, Wofford all have 1-3 marks, while ETSU is 1-4. The defending SoCon champs 1-4 this year. VMI is still winless in the conference at 0-3. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that feat of what's going on in the Southern Conference?
Well, I didn't think Mercer was going to be as good as they are. And it's funny, when I've talked to Brent about this, he feels like that overall they're the most complete team that they played this year. The most athletic team, and I 100% agree with this, that the Citadel has faced this year has been Campbell. Maybe a little bit undisciplined, although it didn't look that much. They didn't look undisciplined to me in the season opener. But the most athletic teams in Campbell, I know they're not in the SoCon, but a little bit surprised that Mercer is where they are. But and you think about that game. I mean, Logan Billings fumbles going into the end zone. They miss a field goal. They only lose that game 17-0. They were in that game for for big chunks of that, and probably had a chance to make that game pretty competitive. So, on the road, they've already proven they can play with some of the elite teams in the SoCon. But a little bit surprised that ETSU is where they are, and honestly surprised that Furman is where they are right now. I thought they'd be 2-2 or 1-3 at this point.
Well, winning over the Citadel is a cure for a lot of these teams. Unfortunately, the Citadel, though, still ahead of teams like ETSU and VMI, technically, because they haven't played VMI and they've already got the win over the Bucks, to their credit. Andrew, anything non-football before we get you out of here and get ready for the wedding?
If you don't hear from me next week, you know that my wife has bludgeoned me to death at some point. The next week, so.
Out of love, I'm sure.
I'm trying not to give her any cause.
Okay, well, it's a great thing, I guess. I've not had a daughter get married, but I'm sure it's a very special time, and we are very proud of you and your daughter. And I know you got what a great place to go get married up there in Northeast Georgia this time of year. They were right. I hate that it's football season, but they have picked a great time of year to do it.
Yeah, the other thing I'm worried about is the father-daughter dance. We've been practicing that a little bit, going over some of our moves, so that should be interesting.
In case you missed it there, Andrew, I actually am blessing this marriage. I'm giving you the thumbs up. It's okay. You can proceed.
Thank you.
It's Thomas you got to worry about.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. So we basketball, they're practicing right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So not much there. What did I see? I heard something about Ed Conroy's team. I just am impressed that he's got a lot of really good non-conference opponents, some big boy opponents, the North Carolinas, the Clemsons of the world on the schedule this year. It's a definite step up in the non-conference scheduling. Maybe can bring in some fair amount of money to the program with that type of scheduling. So all that's good news. And, of course, we'll talk about it all right here on Citadel Gray Line. Andrew, again, thanks. Enjoy your weekend. Thomas, I'll be watching for your comments Saturday when the Bulldogs and Catamounts are up on the gridiron in Cullowhee. And we thank everybody for being a part of the show. Don't forget to text us your answer on our question of the nickname of Norwich in honor of Brent Thompson. And we'll be right back here next week to recap what we hope will be a win in Cullowhee. All right here on Citadel Gray Line, a production of CRM Sports. Thank y'all so much for tuning us in. Have a great rest of your week.